Civil services within the federal government are necessary. Publicly funded organizations like the United States Postal Service, the Public Broadcasting Service, and the National Weather Service all provide accessible services and information to everyone. Tragically, each of these organizations have one more thing in common.
Sweeping changes of the Trump administration
will be terminated at the end of September.
Afternoon layoffs included meteorologists.
There are growing efforts to weaken our institutions, which threaten the very fabric of our country. With how dire our situation is, there is only one more question left to ask. What happens when our institutions are weakened and power is consolidated among the wealthy elite? Thankfully, we can compare documented history with the present. This allows us to know what to look out for and what we can do about it going forward. My name is Hunter Reeves, and today we are going to be talking about the destruction of civil service in the context of rising fascism. More critically, we will be exploring the history of fascism, why civil services are attacked, and the warning signs to look out for. If you already have a negative view of public services, or you tend to prefer private sector solutions, then you may not agree with or even like this video. That's okay. I encourage you to watch anyway. Maybe you will learn something new, and if you disagree with something in this video, leave a comment down below explaining why. With all of that out of the way, now we can dive into some of the history of fascism, but in order to do that, we're going to have to first go back in time. The first fascist regime was established in Italy by Benito Mussolini. He came into power when he was appointed as the prime minister in October of 1922. His role as a fascist dictator was not immediate. It took several years of Black Shirt Squad violence to increase fear and to suppress opposition to Mussolini. This was the beginning of power consolidation for the growing fascist regime. Their first goal? Dismantling and weakening every institution tied to Italy's liberal democracy. This was the first of a series of dominoes that fell, eventually leading to Mussolini's total control of Italy. Institutions do not protect themselves, and this was a stark reminder of that. Of course, Italy was not the only country falling into fascism at the time. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party rose into power in 1933. Their focus was on the complete dismantling of Germany's Democratic Republic. This began with their institutions. The work to erode all aspects of life tied to these institutions started immediately. Each institution was systematically changed to serve the fascist Nazi state. In both cases of Mussolini and Hitler, all aspects of the government were eroded into serving the state. So what happens when loyalty to the state is prioritized over serving the people? Now, the history presented here is a lot more complicated than what my brief overview covers. That being said, it at least allows you to see what rising fascism has done in the past. I actually encourage you to read up on the history yourself. Don't let some person on the internet do your thinking for you. Since that disclaimer is out of the way, we can now continue on with how the history covered here ties into the present rise of fascism. What happens when powerful and wealthy organizations try to implement their will into the government? What if that effort is tied to the dismantling of institutions in order to consolidate power? Well, we have the answer right in front of our eyes. The Heritage Foundation is a massively wealthy and powerful far-right think tank that funded Project 2025. Project 2025 outlines several initiatives that focus on downsizing the number of federal agencies. One of the agencies mentioned in this massive document is the National Weather Service. On page 675, you can read a section specifically about the Weather Service. It notes that the National Weather Service should, going forward, focus solely on commercial operations, whatever that means. Right off the bat, they accuse public service meteorologists for having inferior weather forecasts as compared to the private sector likes of AccuWeather. It then links to an article written by AccuWeather praising AccuWeather for its near-perfect forecasting record. It continues on, talking about how the National Weather Service should just be data brokers of weather information for the private sector. This is the privatization of the National Weather Service, something that the weather community has rightfully feared for decades. It appears to be finally happening, and we're all supposed to just go along with it? One practice that is prevalent in the private sector are layoffs. These layoffs are usually touted as being necessary for the company, but the reality is, layoffs are just a tool used to protect profit. Layoffs prioritize profit over people, and the working class, as always, are the ones to take the hit. This is not something the public sector has to worry about, at least until recently. That is where Elon Musk, an unelected government official, and Doge, an unofficial government agency, come into play. To carry out the will of Project 2025, Doge worked to illegally obliterate government agencies from the inside. This was carried out in tandem with early buyout offers for huge swaths of civil servants. This weakened institutions further by reducing the workforce in the federal government. I'll also note that many of these agencies were already critically understaffed, including but not limited to the National Weather Service. Once again, I will reiterate. Fascist governments aim to weaken institutions in order to consolidate power. Civil servants do not work for the president. Civil servants do not work for the state. Civil servants do not work for an elite group of people in power at the top. Civil servants work for the public. So what happens when newly hired civil servants are tested for loyalty as part of the application process? Suddenly, the private sector tactic of mass layoffs within federal agencies makes sense from the perspective of the fascist. Get rid of seasoned professionals and hire new people who are more likely to be loyal to the regime. This is a fascist red flag, and it's something the US government is currently doing right now. Loyalty tests for civil servants cripples our institutions even further, and consolidates more power into the hands of the government. It's hard not to feel defeated when all this power is surmounted against us, but it's important that we don't give up on hope. A big reason I left the National Weather Service was so I could dedicate as much time as I can to speak out against what's happening. We all have a voice, and each and every one of us should be using it right now. You may be asking yourself, what's the best way to fight back? One of the things I'm doing right now is staying informed and being aware of sources of misinformation and speaking out against it when I see it. You could share this video with your friends, help educate others and show them what's happening. Pick one or two causes that you firmly believe in and care about and take its side. Reading books right now is very important. There are tons of books out there that you can read that will help you navigate what's happening in our country. And I would say most critically, take care of yourselves, eat well, and exercise regularly. Take mental health breaks. Take care of your mental health. Don't let that slip away from you. Try to find ways that you can make friends and build community. This may be hard for some of us, and I understand that. I've had a hard time making friends as an adult. That's why it's important to find communities that believe in causes that you believe in and join those. You'll make friends naturally just being in that environment. And remember, no matter where you're at in life right now, no matter what you're currently doing, just know that you're not alone in this.